Have you ever thought you were alone until you heard a whisper from under your bed? What if that whisper wasn't your imagination? The child under the bed. The clock on the nightstand glowed 3:07 a.m. The house was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the old wall clock. Sarah blinked groggily, unsure what had woken her, until she heard it again. A soft, trembling whimper. "Mommy, help me." Sarah bolted upright. The voice was small, frightened. It was Oliver's voice. She turned, her head toward his bed across the room. Her 5-year-old son lay peacefully under his Spider-Man blanket, his chest rising and falling with deep, steady breaths. But the voice hadn't come from the bed. It had come from underneath it. Her breath caught in her throat. The room suddenly felt colder, as if an unseen presence had crept in, coiling around her. Just a nightmare, she told herself. Maybe I imagined it. But then it came again, closer this time. "Mommy, help me." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly reached for her phone, the dim glow of the screen casting eerie shadows across the room. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to move. Each step toward Oliver's bed felt heavier, like something unseen was trying to hold her back. The wooden floor creaked beneath her weight as she knelt beside the bed. She hesitated. A childhood memory surfaced in her mind. Her own mother once warning her never to let her feet dangle off the bed at night, never to look underneath unless she was ready to see what waited there. Brushing away the thought, she took a deep breath and lowered her head. The air was wrong, cold, damp, carrying the faint smell of rot. Then she saw it. A pair of eyes, wide, glassy, and identical to Oliver's, stared back at her from the darkness. "Mommy, it's not me on the bed." Sarah gasped, jerking back so fast she nearly lost her balance. A sharp chill ran down her spine as she snapped her gaze toward the sleeping Oliver. He hadn't moved. He was still curled up, his small face peaceful in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Did I imagine it? Her breathing came in quick, shallow gasps as she hesitantly leaned forward again. The darkness under the bed seemed thicker, deeper than it should be. The space was too small for anything to fit there. Yet she had seen something, a trick of the light, a waking dream. Gritting her teeth, she reached out, hesitating before gripping the blanket. With one swift motion, she lifted it, exposing the empty wooden floor beneath. Nothing. The space was vacant, just as it should be. Sarah let out a shaky breath, pressing a hand to her chest to steady her heartbeat. Maybe the stress is getting to me. She glanced once more at Oliver, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. He was fine, safe, sleeping. Shaking off the unease, she stood up and returned to bed. But even as she closed her eyes, sleep didn't come easily. The image of those two familiar eyes lingered in her mind. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains when Sarah finally stirred. She sat up, rubbing her temples. The night felt distant, like a strange dream. But something wasn't right. Oliver usually woke her up by now, either jumping on the bed or calling for breakfast. But the house was eerily silent. A creeping sense of unease gripped her as she threw off the covers and hurried toward his bed. He wasn't there. The blanket lay crumpled, the pillow slightly indented where his head should have been. "Oliver," she called, her voice shaking slightly. No response. She rushed out of the bedroom, checking the hallway. The bathroom door was open, empty. She peeked into the small playroom where his toys were scattered across the floor. Still, nothing. Her heart pounded harder. Just as she was about to call his name again, a sound reached her ears. Scratching, faint, rhythmic, coming from his bedroom. Sarah turned back slowly, every nerve in her body on high alert. The sound was coming from under the bed. Dread pooled in her stomach as she stepped forward. She dropped to her knees, bracing herself before lifting the blanket. For a second, she saw nothing but shadows. Then, movement. Something shifted in the darkness. Her breath caught in her throat as Oliver's voice drifted up, soft and trembling. "Mommy, I'm stuck. Please help me." Sarah's blood ran cold. Because Oliver was behind her, she turned her head so slowly, it felt like time had stretched, her body rigid with fear. Oliver stood in the doorway, rubbing his sleepy eyes. His Spider-Man pajamas were slightly wrinkled from sleep. "Mommy," he mumbled, voice thick with drowsiness. Sarah's body refused to move. Her gaze flickered back to the shadows beneath the bed. The scratching had stopped. The space was empty. Nothing was there, yet the voice had been real. She swallowed hard, forcing a shaky laugh as she got to her feet. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Did you sleep well?" Oliver nodded. "Yeah." He glanced toward his bed, then at her. "Did you hear it too?" Her stomach dropped. "Hear what?" "The crying." Sarah's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Oliver frowned. "Last night, I woke up and heard someone crying under my bed. I thought it was you." Her body went ice cold. He heard it too. Before she could respond, Oliver yawned and stretched. "I'm hungry," he said casually, oblivious to the terror gripping his mother. Sarah forced a smile. "Let's get breakfast." As she led him toward the kitchen, she cast one last glance at the bed. Something had been there, watching, waiting. And she had a terrible feeling. It wasn't gone. The rest of the morning passed uneventfully, but Sarah couldn't shake the unsettling feeling from the night before. As she prepared the breakfast, her mind kept replaying Oliver's words. "I woke up and heard someone crying under my bed. I thought it was you." She wanted to believe it had just been a nightmare, that maybe Oliver had been talking in his sleep, and she had imagined the voice under the bed. But deep down she knew better. Something had been there. "Mom, why are you looking at me like that?" Oliver asked, swinging his legs under the kitchen table. He was happily munching on his toast, completely unaware of the fear tightening in her chest. Sarah forced a smile. "Just thinking about work, sweetheart." It wasn't a complete lie. She worked from home as a freelance editor, and deadlines were always looming over her. But today, work was the least of her concerns. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked, setting his cup of orange juice in front of him. Oliver nodded. "Yeah, but..." He hesitated, his fingers playing with the crust of his toast. "But what?" He lowered his voice. "I think there's someone else in my room." Sarah's grip tightened on the edge of the counter. "What do you mean?" Oliver glanced toward the hallway, as if making sure no one was listening. Then he whispered, "I saw someone in my closet last night." A chill crept up Sarah's spine. "Was it a shadow?" she asked carefully. Maybe from the streetlight. Oliver shook his head. No, it was a person. But they didn't move. Just stood there, watching. Sarah felt her stomach twist. Did you see their face? Oliver shook his head again. It was too dark. But I felt them, Mommy. His voice dropped lower. And I think they're still there. Sarah inhaled slowly, forcing herself to stay calm. She didn't want to scare him, but every instinct inside her was screaming that something was terribly wrong. Sweetheart, she said, gently. Sometimes our eyes play tricks on us in the dark. But if it makes you feel better, I'll check your closet later, okay? Oliver nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Later that afternoon, after finishing some work, Sarah decided to check Oliver's room while he was playing outside. Sunlight streamed in through the curtains, making the space feel warm and safe. But Sarah didn't feel safe. She moved toward the closet slowly, every step making her pulse quicken. It was just a closet, wooden doors, a handle slightly chipped from years of use. Nothing unusual. Yet, when she reached for the handle, her hand trembled. She yanked it open. Clothes, shoes, a box of old toys. Nothing more. Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She was being ridiculous. There was no one in here. But as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. The space behind the clothes looked darker, too dark. Like the shadows weren't just shadows, but something deeper. A faint whisper brushed against her ear. Mommy. Sarah gasped and stumbled back, slamming the closet door shut. The house fell silent. She stood there, heart hammering, staring at the closet door like it might open on its own. Nothing happened, but she had heard it. Taking a shaky breath, she quickly left the room, trying to push away the overwhelming sense that something was watching her. That night, Sarah made sure Oliver was asleep before settling into her own bed. She told herself that she was just imagining things, that there was no one in Oliver's closet, no whisper, no eyes under the bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Sometime past the midnight, she stirred at the sound of soft footsteps outside her room. She froze. The footsteps weren't heavy, more like a child's. Sarah sat up, her breath shallow. Oliver, she called softly. No answer. Sliding out of bed, she padded toward the hallway. The wooden floor felt ice cold under her bare feet. She peeked toward Oliver's room. His door was slightly open, just enough for a sliver of darkness to creep out. A faint rustling sound came from inside. Sarah's stomach twisted. Slowly, she stepped forward and pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit by the nightlight in the corner. Oliver was in bed, his tiny form rising and falling with each breath. But the closet door, it was open, wide open. Sarah's breath hitched. She was sure she had closed it earlier. The air in the room felt wrong, thicker, heavier. She reached for the closet door, her fingers barely grazing the edge, when Oliver suddenly sat up straight. Mommy, he whispered. His voice was strange, flat, almost distant. Sarah's heart pounded. What is it, sweetheart? Oliver slowly turned his head toward her. Then, in a voice that wasn't his own, he murmured, He's awake now. A wave of cold dread washed over her. Before she could react, a soft thud echoed from under the bed. Sarah's body locked in place. She didn't want to look. She didn't want to know. But then the whisper returned, barely audible, crawling under her skin like ice. "Mommy, help me." Sarah grabbed Oliver, holding him close as she backed away. The closet door slammed shut on its own. Oliver buried his face in her shoulder, his small hands gripping her tightly. Sarah didn't move. She didn't breathe. Something was inside the room with them, and it wasn't leaving. Sarah didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sat on the edge of Oliver's bed, holding him close while staring at the closet door. It remained shut, but she knew something was behind it. Oliver eventually dozed off in her arms, his small body warm against hers, but Sarah's mind raced. What did he mean when he said, "He's awake now"? And more terrifyingly, who was he? The air in the room felt lighter as dawn broke. The oppressive weight that had hung over them all night seemed to fade with the morning light. But Sarah wasn't fooled. It's still here. It's just waiting. She took a deep breath and gently placed Oliver back under his blanket. He shifted, but remained asleep. Carefully, she stood up and stepped toward the closet. The memory of the whisper under the bed sent a chill through her, but she needed to face this. If she left it alone, it wouldn't go away. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle. With a deep breath, she pulled the door open. Nothing, just clothes, shoes, and old toys, the same as before. But the feeling of something watching her remained. She reached inside hesitantly, pushing the hangers apart. The deeper she reached, the colder the air felt. Then, her fingertips brushed against something solid. Her heart lurched. There shouldn't be anything behind the clothes. The closet was small, only a few feet deep, but there was something there. She yanked her hand back. A faint rustling sound came from the closet, like fabric brushing against the wall. Sarah slammed the door shut. She didn't care what was behind it. She just knew she had to keep it in there. Later that day, Sarah spent the morning researching online unusual noises at night. Children seeing figures in closets, hearing voices from under the bed. The results ranged from logical explanations, sleep paralysis, night terrors, to horrifying stories of hauntings and supernatural entities. She found a thread discussing the Watchers, beings that lurked in dark spaces, appearing only when acknowledged. They are always there, one post read. Once you hear them, they won't stop. They want you to look. They want you to notice them. Sarah swallowed hard. That was exactly what was happening. She slammed the laptop shut. This isn't real. It couldn't be. But she knew better. The house felt different. The air felt heavier. And Oliver wasn't acting like himself. That evening, "Mommy, can I sleep in your room tonight?" Oliver stood at her bedroom door, clutching his stuffed rabbit. His eyes were wide, fear flickering behind them. Sarah softened. "Of course, sweetheart." She tucked him into bed beside her, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Did you have a bad dream?" Oliver hesitated, then nodded. Sarah hesitated before asking, "Was it about the closet?" Oliver swallowed and looked down. I don't think it's the closet anymore." Her stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Oliver clutched his rabbit tighter. "I think it's inside the walls now." Sarah felt ice crawl down her spine. She forced a smile. "It's just your imagination, honey." "You're safe here." Oliver nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That night, Sarah barely slept. Every small creak of the house made her body tense. Every shadow seemed deeper. Then, at 3:07 a.m., she heard it. A soft, slow scratching, coming from inside the walls. Sarah held her breath, her heart pounding so loud, she swore it would wake Oliver. The sound grew closer. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was just behind the headboard. Then, a whisper, so faint she almost didn't hear it. "Mommy, help me." Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to Oliver, praying he was asleep, but his eyes were wide open, staring at her. "You heard it too," he whispered. Sarah couldn't answer, because now the scratching wasn't just behind the bed. It was all around them. The scratching sound surrounded them. It wasn't just coming from behind the headboard anymore. It echoed from the walls, the ceiling, the floorboards beneath them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She reached for Oliver, pulling him close. His small hands clutched her shirt tightly. "Mommy, it's getting louder," he whispered. She had to do something, now. Taking a deep breath, she swung her legs over the bed and stood up. The room was dimly lit by the glow of the street lamp outside, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally along the walls. Sarah grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. The scratching paused for a moment, like whatever was behind the walls had noticed her movement. Then it shifted. The sound moved toward the closet. Slow, dragging scrape against the wooden panels. Sarah's fingers tightened around the phone. She knew she shouldn't go near it, but she had to see, had to know. She stepped forward cautiously, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. Oliver whimpered behind her, his voice small. "Don't open it, Mommy." Sarah hesitated, staring at the closet door. It was slightly ajar, just enough for a sliver of darkness to peek through. With a trembling hand, she reached for the handle. Sudden thump from inside made her freeze. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Mommy, please, help me." Sarah yanked the door open. The closet was empty. Just clothes, hangers, boxes, but the air inside felt wrong. Thick, heavy, like something unseen was pressing against her. Her flashlight flickered. Then, something moved, deep, in the back of the closet, where the shadows were darkest. She saw it, a small, pale hand, reaching out. Sarah stumbled backward, her breath caught in her throat. The hand disappeared into the darkness as quickly as it had come. Then, the whispering started again, but this time it was all around her. "Let me out, let me out, let me out," Oliver screamed. Sarah spun around just in time to see the walls bulging, like something was inside them trying to push through. The drywall cracked, the wooden panels groaned, then a single clawed finger broke through the paint. Sarah grabbed Oliver and ran. The basement door. She didn't stop running until they reached the kitchen. She locked the door behind them, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Oliver buried his face into her shoulder, his small body shaking. "Mommy, what is it?" he whimpered. Sarah didn't know how to answer. She held him close, trying to calm her racing heart. The house had gone eerily silent again, but she knew it was still there. Whatever was inside the walls wasn't done yet. Then, from the far side of the kitchen, the basement door creaked open. Sarah's breath caught. They never used the basement It was mostly storage, old furniture, broken appliances, things she had meant to throw away but never got around to. And yet now, the door stood open. A soft creak echoed from the darkness below. Oliver whimpered, "It wants us to go down there." Sarah swallowed hard. "We're not going anywhere near it." She reached for her phone with one hand, keeping the other wrapped protectively around Oliver. The screen was glitching, flickering with static. Then, for a brief second, a single message appeared on the screen. "Downstairs." Her stomach dropped, then something moved at the top of the basement stairs. A shadow, tall, thin, watching. Sarah didn't wait to see more. She grabbed Oliver's hand and ran for the front door. But just as she reached for the lock, a loud bang echoed from the basement, followed by the sound of something crawling up the stairs. The escaped Sarah fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking. Behind her, she could hear it, the wet, unnatural sound of something dragging itself across the floor. Then, a voice, but it wasn't Oliver's. It was hers. "Don't go, Mommy." Sarah turned her head slightly, just enough to see herself standing at the basement doorway, pale, motionless, watching. Oliver screamed. The lock finally clicked. Sarah yanked the door open and ran outside, dragging Oliver with her. The night air was freezing, but she didn't stop. She didn't look back, not even when she heard the whisper behind her one last time. "Come back, please." But Sarah never would, because she finally understood. It wasn't Oliver who needed help. It was something else, something that wanted to take her place. Sarah ran until her legs burned, gripping Oliver's hands so tightly he whimpered. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not while she still felt its presence behind her. She didn't look back. Not when the whispers floated through the air. Not when the house groaned like something was still inside it, waiting. Not even when Oliver choked out, "Mommy, it's still watching us." Only when she reached her car did she finally pause. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for the keys. Oliver clung to her side, his breath quick and shallow. She yanked the door open, shoved him inside, and climbed in after him, locking the doors, checking the mirrors. Silence. Sarah's heart pounded. Her hands gripped the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She turned to Oliver. "We're okay, baby. We're safe." Oliver's lip quivered. "No, we're not." Sarah swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" His tiny hand pointed at the house. At the second floor window, Sarah turned her head slowly and froze. A figure stood in Oliver's bedroom window, tall, shadowy. But the worst part, it looked just like her. Same messy hair, same terrified eyes, watching. Then, ever so slowly, it lifted one hand and waved. Sarah's breath hitched. She slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as she sped out of the driveway. She didn't care where she was going. She just knew one thing. She could never go back. The motel Sarah drove for nearly an hour before stopping at a small roadside motel. The neon sign flickered, casting an eerie glow over the parking lot. She hesitated. It wasn't much, but it was far away. That had to be enough. She checked into a room with shaky hands, barely able to sign her name. The clerk eyed her suspiciously, but didn't ask questions. Once inside, she locked the door, bolted it, pulled the curtains shut. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. Oliver climbed onto the bed, hugging his stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, is it gone?" Sarah forced a smile. "Yes, baby, we're safe now." She hoped it was true, but deep down, something told her it wasn't over. 7 a.m. A sharp knock jolted Sarah awake. Her heart pounded. She sat up, glancing at the door. Another knock, louder this time. Then, a voice. "Mommy, open the door." Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to Oliver, but he was still asleep beside her. The knocking continued. "Mommy, it's me. Let me in." Tears burned her eyes. It was her voice, the same voice she had heard whispering from the closet. Slowly, she slid off the bed and crept toward the peephole. Her hands trembled as she peered outside. The figure stood in the hallway, tall, motionless, and when it looked up, Sarah's breath caught. It was her, pale, hollow-eyed, a twisted reflection of herself, smiling. Sarah stumbled backward. The knocking grew violent. The door rattled as if something was trying to force its way inside. Then, the whispers returned. "You left me behind, Mommy, but I found you." The lights flickered. The air grew heavy. Sarah grabbed Oliver and ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind them. She held him close as the knocking turned to pounding. Then, silence. A long, unnatural silence. Sarah didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, a soft whisper right outside the bathroom door. "I just want to come home." The lights went out. The final choice. Sarah sat frozen in the dark, holding Oliver close. She had run. She had locked the doors, but it wasn't enough. It followed them. It wouldn't stop. She had to end this. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "Oliver, I need you to stay here. Okay? No matter what happens, don't open the door." His eyes filled with fear. "But Mommy," she kissed his forehead. "I love you. Be brave for me." Then, before she could hesitate, she stepped out. The motel room was silent, empty. The door was slightly ajar, the cold night air seeping in. Sarah's breath trembled, and then, standing in the center of the room, her reflection, smiling. "You don't belong here anymore," Sarah whispered. The reflection tilted its head. "But I do." Sarah took a shaky step forward. "What do you want?" It grinned. "To take your place." Sarah clenched her fists. "You can't have it." The reflection chuckled. "You already let me in, Mommy. The moment you looked under the bed, the moment you opened the closet, I was always waiting." Sarah's breath hitched. It had never been about the house. It had always been her fear, her belief. She had acknowledged it, and now it was real. The reflection stepped closer, its smile stretching too wide. "You can't fight me. I am you." Sarah's heart pounded. Then, a thought, a desperate, terrifying thought. She turned away. "I don't see you," she whispered. The reflection stopped. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. "You're not real. You don't exist." The air around her grew ice cold. The whispers turned to screams. Sarah stood firm, refusing to look. The motel room trembled. The walls groaned. Then, silence. She opened her eyes. The reflection was gone. The motel was still. Sarah let out a shuddering breath. It was over. 1 week later, Sarah and Oliver moved to a new town. A fresh start. The house was gone. The nightmares had faded. Things were normal again. But some nights when she put Oliver to bed, she still felt something watching. And when she walked past mirrors, she never looked for too long, just in case.